right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today is day 9 of the Richard Allen trial. We'll be going over, we'll recap day 8 because I didn't cover it. And then, of course, we'll get into today. Let me fix this mic real quick here. Make sure... Mic check, mic check. Okay, audio is working. Perfect. All right, good to see you guys. Welcome. Let's see here. Make sure chat is good. All right. What I'll do real quick so I can just set up a couple more things. I'm just going to play a 2-minute recap of the of Abby and Libby's story, just in case if anybody's not familiar with this case, and then we'll get into a little bit of day 8, just a quick recap, and then we'll jump into today's current events, which right now they have a DNA expert on the stand.
Teenage girls.
And they are, I think, just after lunch right now. She may be the only witness, not sure, or expert on the stand today. We'll have to see. But we'll go from there. So let me play this real quick so I can set up some things, and we'll be right back.
Abby Williams and Liberty German had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge, which was supposed to be a teenage hangout with a historic trail and a really high old abandoned bridge. The two girls, who were best friends, just had a sleepover the night before and were excited when Libby's sister, Kelsey German, said she would drop them off as long as the two girls found a ride home, which they did. Although it was February, the temperature was nice for that day, and even though it was a Monday, they had school off that day. The two girls, Abby and Libby, would be dropped off just before 2 p.m., where they planned on only staying for a couple of hours. The two teens, Abby and Libby, would begin walking the 501 trail to the Monon High Bridge. As the two would approach the bridge, Libby, who had her iPhone, would take 2 pictures, one as they passed the first platform, and another which shows Abby looking down as she is crossing the scary, tall, gap-filled railroad tie. The girls didn't know it yet, but they were not alone. As a few hours would go by, the father of Libby, Derek German, would show up, but the two girls were not at the meetup spot. Thinking that the two teens just lost track of time, he would end up calling Libby's phone. The phone was ringing, but no one was answering. He would begin searching for the two teens, but when running into other people, no one had seen them. Eventually, the authorities would be called out, and this would lead to a search party looking for the two girls. But sadly, there was no sign of them on that first night of the 13th. With the search being called off late that night for safety reasons, it would be resumed early that next day. They brought in helicopters, divers, and many other resources to scour the area. But just around noon that day, they would soon discover a grisly scene. Authorities would discover the two girls across the river, and both had sadly been murdered.
Investigators solemnly identified the two bodies found in Carroll County as 13-year-olds Libby German and Abby Williams.
We would soon get multiple press conferences, including one of the most memorable statements by Superintendent Doug Carter.
We know that this is about power to you.
All right.
And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will. A question to you. What will those closest to you think of?
Okay.
2 children. Only a coward would do so.
Okay, so there's a quick little recap. Yeah, I've looked at the whole Odinism thing. I don't buy into it, Grandma Shirley. To be honest, Brad Holder has an alibi. He was at work, clocked in. You know who doesn't have an alibi? Richard Allen. And he's the one that said he was there between 1:30 and 3:30 when the murders were taking place. His phone, which he seems to collect all of his phones all the way back to the Nokia days. And the one phone 23 phones that they collected, the one phone that is missing is the phone from 2017. Is that a coincidence? I do understand the connection with BH, with his son obviously dating Abby, but I think that connection goes about as far as that. And then, of course, the Odin paganism thing that they're into. But again, BH was clocked in. He has an alibi, whereas Richard Allen was not working, went to his mother's, and then went to the bridge. So that's just my opinion on that stuff. Let's get into day 8. This is just a recap video for day 8 because I didn't really cover it, but we always, kind of covered the day before anyway. So let me scroll over to it. I've got tons of stuff, of course. So day 8, they had Jerry Holman. Wasn't much going on. Obviously, it was a Saturday. They only have half days. And he really just kind of talked about his interview with Richard Allen. Apparently, the jury's supposed to see these interviews. I thought they were going to play them today, but they have the DNA expert going on. So I am just going to play just a little news recap on that. And then I've got a few things before we get into today. Now, I do agree. The way the law enforcement handled this, there was definitely some mistakes, but nobody's perfect. But I would agree that there was definitely some mistakes that happened on the law enforcement side, tips getting lost. Obviously, now we know it wasn't really Dan Doolin's fault. I think we kind of blamed him with the tip being lost about Richard Allen, but now we kind of understand more that this tip was called in by Allen, and then the dispatcher that received the tip I put kind of the wrong name, and also put cleared, and I think that all kind of got lost. And then when Doolin was on the stand, even some of the defense people even said he came off as more of a credible witness. Okay, I am just trying to get it. Okay.
Interview with.
There we go.
5 years after Abby Williams.
This is just a recap of day 8 from the news article. That way we can kind of get up to current events.
Williams and Libby German were found dead. IT-Mate's Kyla Russell tells us what the lead investigator on the case said on the stand today.
Lieutenant Jerry Holman arrested Richard Allen in October of 2022 after a heated interview. That was just 2 weeks after Allen's home had been searched and his guns and car had been seized. Holman first explained his suspect questioning technique, saying he often lies about the amount of evidence they have.
Think so.
It's something he admitted to doing in an October 26, 2022 recorded interview with Allen at the Lafayette State Police Post. It was there that he told Allen the man's voice on the widely circulated Bridge Guy video was Allen's.
Right,
he said Allen denied that and also said he had no hand in the deaths of the 2 girls. And despite an expert believing the same cartridge found between the girls' bodies had cycled through Allen's gun, which was recovered in that search of his house, Allen continued to deny any involvement at least 20 times. Holman told the jury Allen said, "What kind of good person kills 2 girls?" Allen also said, "I'm not going to tell you something I didn't do. I don't care what you do to me. I'm not going to tell you I did something I didn't do." The investigator also told the jury that during the interview, he noticed subtle signs of deception in Allen.
I think the public needs to see this. Obviously, I'm sure everybody's got their own opinions on just hearing this interview. Obviously, there was another interview that they're supposed to play as well. So the one that they're talking about here, and then allegedly another one, because he was interviewed twice. But obviously, I would like to see that, and I would like to see like behavioral analysts break that down. You know, that's kind of some popular videos on YouTube is the interrogation videos. One thing I noted is obviously the defense brought up that he was using the Reed technique, and I think maybe even the prosecution brought that up. One thing I noticed, I was doing a little research. Obviously, the Reed technique is something that was brought up. They started using back in like the 50s or 60s, I think. And now, obviously, it's kind of more frowned upon. What's interesting is the year that the Reed technique started getting frowned upon was actually in 2017. So keep that in mind. So, obviously it sounds like they were still using it. But again, I don't think it's a big deal because obviously he didn't confess during the interviews. He confessed after when he's not being interviewed. So any false confessions, unless you want to say his mother and wife are doing the Reed technique, that's just my opinion there. June, thank you so much. Hit that like button. Yes, please. It helps us out. We will cover everything. But as usual, I like to recap the day before. And I've got a timeline that I also want to show you guys that I built as well.
Like looking down and touching his face. The interview then became heated. Holman said the two men swearing at each other. And after their exchange, Holman confirmed with a few other investigators and decided to arrest Allen that day. Holman told the jury earlier that he had read Allen his rights, and the defense said that's not in the recording. Special Judge Fran Gohl agreed to let the jury see the recording of that interview. They'll also see another recording of a different interview. Reporting here in Delphi, I'm Kyla Russell for Wish TV. WishTV.com or follow us on Facebook for updates.
News 8's coverage of the Delphi murders trial continues online at WishTV.com.
Okay. Then there's just one more.
This is the second time this week Lieutenant Jerry Holman has testified in front of this jury.
One more video. This is 2 minutes, and then I'm going to show you a timeline because something I wanted to build once we heard from Betsy Blair on day like 6 or I think it was like day 6. Because we know Betsy Blair is going to be called back. That's for the defense, and there's some things that I kind of noticed that. I wanted to point out with her timeline because she was there, multiple times that day at the bridge. So I put a visual for you guys with the juveniles there and just the timeline starting at noon when, Allen was supposed to be there. And we'll take a look at that.
And this is the second time this week the defense has poked holes in his account. Holman was the lead investigator of the investigation that began on February 14, 2017, a day after Libby German and Abby Williams disappeared while walking along the Monon High Bridge way above Deer Creek, and their bodies were found, their throats slashed, on the creek's north bank. Holman admitted earlier this week that while he was with Allen as state troopers searched his home in October of 2022, that Allen said to him, quote, "It doesn't matter, it's over," though the conversation was never recorded, even though Allen was told he was a suspect and had already been read his Miranda rights. Then during Allen's arrest 2 years ago today, Holman admitted he lied to his suspect, telling him that experts identified his voice as Bridge Guy, the suspected killer captured on Libby's cell phone on the bridge as she and Abby were being abducted. More than 20 times, Allen denied being the killer and said, quote, "Take all your evidence and just arrest me," which Holman did. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin chipped away at the credibility of the 7-year-long investigation and Holman's account. As the investigator admitted, there was no video of him reminding Allen of his right to remain silent the day he was arrested because, quote, "We had a lot of technical difficulties, and there's been mistakes made, yes." Holman also said for the first time in court that investigators believe Allen may have been interrupted during the abduction and murders because, quote, "He may have heard somebody."
Yeah, and obviously that's going to be coming from a confession, because who else would know that except for the killer and obviously the two victims that can't tell their side of the story, unfortunately, because they were brutally murdered by a monster. And it sickens me. So the only person that would know that would be the killer, and obviously that's got to be from one of the 60 plus confessions that have details only the killer knows about. He started confessing. They mentioned March of 2023. He doesn't get the discovery until like late April. So if anybody wants to say, oh well, he had details from his lawyer. He didn't get discovery because remember they were complaining about the discovery, and so again, only the killer would know those details.
Holman also said he may have misled fellow investigators with his mischaracterization of the accuracy of a firearms examiner's review of the bullet found at the crime scene that reportedly was linked to Richard Allen's gun.
Yeah, again, that's part of the read technique. I mean, I think they still do it, but obviously they don't do the read technique, obviously, because it produced false confessions. They noticed it was more with younger people, like teenagers or, youth, that's a little bit more susceptible to, obviously, that read technique. But I thought it was interesting because 2017 is when they started looking into it. But again, there was no confessions during, Jerry Holman's testimony. So I just, I think it's irrelevant because, there was no false confessions during those interviews.
Before the jury was excused for the weekend, Special Judge Fran Galt told the panel that next week they'll see videos of Allen's heated exchange with investigators.
I think it'll be this
Delphi,
week. It has to be.
CBS 4 News.
I mean, we're at the end of October. So here is, all right, so this is what I like to do. When was the first confession? That's, I've heard a couple dates. I think around March of 2023. There's that letter where he wanted to confess to the warden, but the warden knew that it would be like a conflict of interest. I don't know if that's the right term, but when he wrote to the warden that he wanted to meet with the warden and confess to him, he knew that, that would be an issue, and he called somebody like a detective to come. So I guess hoping that he would confess to the detective so it'd be official. But then I think that the attorneys I don't want to say interviewed, but did what they're paid to do, I guess. So here is Betsy Blair. So one of the things that we learned early, and then we'll get into day 9, but I wanted to put this visual up here because we learned about Betsy Blair. We learned that, she's someone who comes here often. She does what she calls these loops. She parks at the Mears parking lot here. So she'll pass the Who's or Harp store here. This is very important. And obviously, so her car is caught on camera. So at 2:02, or 12, basically noon, her car is caught on camera going east, which then she's going to park here. And what she does, she walks the 501 trail to the bridge. Then she walks back, and then there's the second trail, which is the 508 trail, which goes down to the creek. She says she doesn't go all the way down to the creek when she takes the second trail. I think she says she kind of goes like halfway, maybe. Then she comes back, and then she walks towards the Freedom Bridge, and then she comes back, and then she leaves. So, remember, the 4 juveniles, they're getting there around noon as well, which is very interesting because they just barely miss each other when you play this all out. This is why I like to have the actual visuals timelines. It's one thing to, have, timestamp here with Betsy Blair, this, but when you actually have the visual plotted out, let's just see how this works, okay? So we have Betsy Blair, being seen on the camera, 12:02. She's going to park in the Mears parking lot. We know the juveniles are arriving at noon as well. Betsy Blair now starts her loop. And this is very interesting because now, and everything lines right up. So she goes to the bridge. Now she's going to come back. Now I think before the girls actually get there, Betsy Blair is actually now going to go down this trail. Now I know it looks like they're kind of close together, but so now while she's going down this trail here, and of course this isn't like, the lines are kind of off, but you get the idea. So as she's going down the 508, those juveniles would be literally just shortly after coming down the 501 trail. We know that because at 12:43 they're going to start taking pictures of the bridge. So they literally just miss each other by minutes. Then that allows Betsy Blair to go to her finish the last part of her loop, which is going to the Freedom Bridge. Maybe she didn't go all the way because she had to go to the bathroom. So now it'd be around 12:50. Obviously, we know at 12:43 they're taking pictures of the bridge. Then they said they went down to the creek. And then I think Betsy Blair then leaves and the girls are coming back. So they just miss each other again, just by minutes. And then she's seen at 1:15 leaving. And then what's so interesting is, of course, she'll leave. She's going to go to the bathroom at a public library. And then, of course, we know that the juveniles will continue to the bridge. And then guess who they're going to run into? The killer.
Trails. Sometime before noon that day. They would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back. They would run into somebody who they believe could have been the suspect.
So, there's multiple reasons why I wanted to show this, because I found this fascinating. So let me back it up here. So we go back to where Betsy Blair arrives. Now, remember, Richard Allen's original timeline was 1:30 to 3:30, but of course, obviously that's when the killer arrives, and that's kind of the time frame of the killer, except it's more like 1:30 to 4 or 4:15. So obviously they've got to change that to 12 to 1:30. Obviously you would think his memory would be better when he originally turned in his tip, but yet 5 years later, now when he's getting interviewed, now he's got a better recollection of the time that he was there, and it's now noon to 1:30, which of course we know the defense likes to bring up, how our memory obviously gets worse over time, but yet I guess with Richard Allen it gets better over time. So here's the issue. Again, remember how I talked about these? It's like these girls are almost like bodyguards. We're on a linear path. Now we even have Betsy Blair in here that I've worked in. So let me get this time. Wait until it's, let me hit this time frame right here in just a second. It is 12:30. So if Richard Allen got here, just bear with me 1 second. I have to point this out because this is why I like visual timelines. They show so much more. What did I do? Delphi trial. Give me 1 second here. Delphi trial 2. Oh, did I put any members? Yep, I did. There it is. Okay. All right. I'll widen that out a little bit. Oops, actually want to keep that timeline there. So we got 12:30, right? So let's grab a little Richard Allen here. Okay, we'll just use that. Okay, so we got Richard Allen, right? Okay, so obviously, they keep having issues with the CPS, and they want to, attack that CPS, and Betsy Blair is going to be their best witness, right? So if he arrives at noon, obviously, he says he goes to the Freedom Bridge, and then he goes right to the Monon High Bridge. And you have all these working parts where you're going to have the girls there from 12:43 till about 1. I think they're there for about approximately 15, 17 minutes, and they're going to be walking back. And we know it only takes about 20 to 25 minutes to walk from here to here. And we're going to have Betsy Blair come in, and she's even going to be walking back to the Freedom Bridge while these girls are at the Monon Bridge. Yet none of these, Betsy Blair says nothing about seeing Richard Allen at noon, nor does the girls see Allen at the bridge at 12:30, 12:45, whatever. So where does he go? I mean, they're going to have to change his, where'd he go now? Because he's got to run into somebody in here. And then I got to point out one more thing. If Richard Allen had parked there at the CPS building at noon, and Betsy Blair is their, one of the defense's witnesses are going to call back because, she had a vivid memory and she saw, that comet, Mercury comet. But what I also found interesting is, so note the time here when she's going to be seen on camera leaving. Obviously, she'll be coming back. It's 1:15. Right? Remember, he's there from noon to 1:30. Well, she's going to be driving up. So there's no mention of a car. There's no mention of Richard Allen's car here. So just another thing. Where's Richard Allen? He should have ran into one of these guys. Not at the Freedom Bridge. If anything, he would have ran into maybe Betsy Blair. But these girls are way over here. So again, just another issue in the timeline.
Sometime before noon that day, they would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back. They would run into somebody who they believe could have been the suspect.
I want to be honest. I like Andrea. We talked about her, Grandma Shirley. But yeah, she's clearly... the last episode I watched was heavily pro-defense, in my opinion. But she is very smart. I will give her that. She is smart. But yeah, I had to shut it off because I don't know. I don't see the logic. Before we can get to these other suspects, where is Richard Allen?
The killer likely took.
This is the biggest issue. Where is Richard Allen? His phone, he says he has a phone, but yet there's no geofence data for his phone. They geofenced a time frame. I'm not sure the exact time frame. I'm sure maybe it was mentioned. It was like noon to whatever after the killings, noon to 6, whatever. Remember, they were calling people because they must have geofenced very early on, and so they knew who was in that area, and they were getting hold of them and doing interviews. Yet no Richard Allen. Yet he claims he's on a stock ticker with his phone.
At an abandoned building.
No phone.
Known
no
as the
phone
CPS building.
That he collects all of his phones, but yet the one from 2017 is missing. And then the other biggest issue, and we'll get into day 9, is now he is somewhere leaving the trails at 1:30, but yet the defense now adds in that he leaves in his car at 2:15. So what the hell is he doing for 45 minutes? Like, where, if he's left the trails at 1:30, but he doesn't leave in his car until 2:15, where is he? I'm sorry, like, explain this. Like, where can you put Richard Allen in this? I mean, it's a linear path. He's got to run into one of these girls, not at the Freedom Bridge if he's talking about noon to 1:30.
Trails, sometime before noon that day.
If he got there at noon, even if he took 30 minutes to walk to the High Bridge, he should have ran into these juveniles who were sitting there at 12:43. But that's not the case. They even took pictures. I don't see Richard Allen standing on platform 1. Again, it's just, to me, it's common sense. Like, basic timeline, he's not there.
They would walk to the bridge and turn around and be teenage girls. Abby will.
Sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button.
Teenage girls. Rosie asked Dulan to confirm that Allen said he was on the trail between 1:30 p.m.
All right, I got a couple more
3:30
things, and then we'll get into
said,
day 9. But again, this is why, because I watch a lot after we're done. When I go live, I watch both sides because I want to hear what both sides are saying. And I've watched Andrea. I will say she is smart. She's very intelligent, very well spoken. Amazing vernacular. Very impressed, but in my opinion, she's definitely more defense. So I would say an unbiased. I would kind of disagree. I feel like she's more pro defense in my opinion, which that's fine. I mean, it's her channel. It's her. Her hard work. So I have nothing bad to say about that. I just disagree with, a lot of, obviously, what the defense says. Oh, gosh, you make a great point there, Darlene. I wonder if they did any tower dump in Delphi if Alan had his phone in Peru. Because that sounds like he came from his mom's house and then went here. Because we always kind of wondered, you would think if Alan just left from his home, obviously he would came around and he parked at the CPS building, he would have never been seen on the Hoover Harp store. But for some reason, his car is seen at 127 going west, which is weird, but it would make sense if he came from Peru from his mother's home. Which is another, just a little tidbit, that's like, well, that makes sense. That's why he's seen going west, not seen on the camera at all, because he's coming from northeast, going southwest, and there are some routes that obviously will take you on this country 300 north. So one more thing, and we'll get into, yeah, oh my God. And I would tell you some stuff behind the scenes, because obviously I like Grizzly. I've talked to her a lot behind the scenes. Yeah. She was a hard worker. Both those girls, again, when it comes down to work, they're amazing. But again, I disagree with their stance. And we're all adults. We can agree to disagree. But again, you have these, it's almost like they're like security guards, trolling this path. And they should have ran into Richard Allen a bunch of times.
Trails, sometime before noon that day. They would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back.
Then
They would
one
run
more
into
thing
somebody
here.
who they believe could have been the suspect.
Moxie, come on.
This is the road the killer likely took just before parking.
See, people, when they talk about Richard Allen's height, and we're going to bring this up, we'll talk about that. I think people forget that, he's wearing, he admits to wearing a hat, a stocking cap, one or two, a hoodie, and a jacket with probably another hoodie. But at the very least, he's got a hat and a hoodie on. So, it's not like he's just walking out there strolling along with no hat, no hoodie up, which could deceive, somebody's height.
At an abandoned building known as the CPS building.
I don't know if we know that, Jen. I don't think he did. Now, I know he said he allegedly went to get his coat. It's possible, but to me, why is he going west? I think he went from Peru. I think he told his mom he was going to get his coat. I think he went from Peru.
There is
right
a working
to there.
camera on this building here. According to the PCA, it shows a black Ford Focus passing by at 1:27 p.m. Allegedly, this would be Richard Allen.
Again, a black Ford Focus 2016, population less than 3,000. I'm sure there's maybe a few people that have that car, but how many black Ford Focuses do you think passed that day? I'm going to guess one, maybe two, that entire day. I'd venture to say maybe likely one, but it would be interesting to know if they pulled the whole day and saw all the different vehicles and said, okay, this is the only black Ford Focus we saw that day.
From here, the killer parked his car in an unusual manner, which would catch the attention of other witnesses.
Sorry, slow the chat here. All right, we're going to jump into day 9. I've got just one more thing. So this is the thing is, like, I don't see anybody giving me a logic explanation of where Richard Allen is. Okay, yeah, he's there from noon to 1:30, but, like, how is he not running into people? Is he just invisible and he was there? Maybe he's that short that just no one sees him. He's just, a hobbit and he just gets past people. Not to make fun of short people, but I'm just trying to say, like, that's the thing. I've never seen anybody from the defense try to explain how is he not running into these people on this new alleged timeline that he has a better memory 5.5 years later, yet he's the one that tipped in 1:30 to 3:30 days after the murders, but yet no one doesn't think that's a red flag that now he's changed it to noon to 1:30. He's leaving right when the killer gets there. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to slow down the chat for a minute. Where is the bar at? There it is. Let's see. We'll go 30. Okay. Again, if you guys can, please hit that like button. We're going to get into day 9. I've got just one more thing to go over here. The other thing with Betsy Blair, because obviously they're going to call Betsy Blair back, so this is why I wanted to kind of go over this. So, there were 3 witnesses that noticed cars two of them had noticed that the car was backed up in a suspicious manner. One is at 210. Keep in mind, all of these witnesses, including Betsy Blair, only noticed this car when they were heading northwest, because obviously the road goes west to north. All claimed it was backed in and parked odd. Now, of course, Betsy Blair, when she leaves after seeing Bridge Guy, she is caught on the camera at 2:15 and sees this Mercury Comet, right? So this sounds great for the defense because, they'd say, oh, this killer had a Mercury Comet. But to me, it's irrelevant because before and after Betsy, there's two other witnesses that sees something very similar to a small car. One says similar to a smart car. One says a PT Cruiser, similar to PT Cruiser. Both dark. All right, it's coming up here. Obviously, that's the CPS building before it got torn down. That's where they believe the car parked, right in this spot right there. So that's kind of what it sounds like because anybody that was going this way, there was quite a few, well, I wouldn't say quite a few, but there's people that drove this way, obviously. No one ever mentioned a car. So they only saw it when they were coming. So that tells me that it was likely backed up right here. There's obviously some bush, some foliage, whatever you want to call it. That seems to block someone's perspective when they're coming east-south on that road. So again, I know that they have 214 Betsy Blair's Mercury Comet, but 14 minutes later, there's somebody driving that same route, and they mention it's similar to a dark smart car. So again, and here's a view of Richard Allen's car from kind of I don't know if that's satellite, but it from the top view, it almost looks like a PT Cruiser, the 2016 Ford Focus. So to me, even if they bring her out, again, you've got somebody 14 minutes later that's going to say, yeah, I saw something, a dark smart car. Nothing like this car here. So to me, I think that kind of cancels out this Mercury Comet. I think he did wear gloves. Yeah, no DNA. Obviously, that didn't surprise me because I think if they had DNA, like legit DNA, they would have caught the killer a long time ago. That's why when you speak to people that know a lot more about DNA, like former crime scene techs, with the Odinist theory, they want to bring in anywhere from 3 to 5 suspects. And yet these 5 guys, up to 5 people that murdered this girl, these Odinists, leave no DNA. I don't know if anybody's worn what is that, like those wool t-shirts where, fiber collects like crazy everywhere. So 5 people go and, are involved in this and they leave no DNA behind. Because we know we can transfer DNA easily to each other. Obviously, the hair from Abby was from Libby, Libby's family, Kelsey. We learned that today. But yeah, you would have 5 times more likely the chance of DNA being left. More killers, more potential of DNA from the killer being left at the scene. Yeah, Mama. He said he was there from well, yeah, it all depends. He claims he was now there from noon to 1:30. 5.5 years later, I guess his memory gets better, unlike mine and others. But he still claims he was wearing the same clothing as BG. And just look at this close up. No, this is an AI. I did an overlay at the end, but I mean, just kind of creepy to see that. I mean, you can't make a lot out, but and I know what Brad Holder looks like, and I would say, he does definitely have some similar features, but again, Brad Holder has an alibi. He was clocked in at work. I don't know what better alibi you can get than being clocked in at work. Yeah, we're going to get into the DNA. Let's clear this up because, boy, there was some fireworks going on early on because they mentioned unknown male DNA. And then, of course, it got cleared up that unknown male DNA was actually just from a tech lab guy that just, unfortunately, his DNA got mixed in. And, yeah. So we'll go over all the DNA, what they had. We'll break it down.
Senior investigative report.
What is that photo? That's just kind of a close-up of the bridge guy. And then I have Richard Allen on the left because they're both kind of looking down a little bit. It's not AI enhanced or anything. It's not Richard Allen. This is taken from way before they even knew about Richard Allen. Yeah. So let's get into day 9. So we lost a juror. We kind of heard something about that on day 8. I rumored that or theorized it was probably a family emergency, and that's apparently what it was. And I guess whatever happened must have been something where they can no longer continue. So now we still have the 12 regulars and 3 alternates. So I think we only have 5 males and 11 females. 8 women and 4 men on the 12. And then 3 women and 1 man, or 2 women. Actually, I added that up wrong. But 2 women and 1 on the alternate.
Reporter Bob Siegel said Richard Allen is wearing a green checkered shirt and khaki pants with reading glasses on top of his head. Special Judge Francis Gull noted that there are now 15.
That's such a great... There you go, Jacqueline. BTK killed 4 people probably by himself in an hour and a half. Law enforcement at the time thought it was a gang that did it. Yeah. Look at Brian Koberger, unless you're a Koberger guy. 4 people in about 8 minutes. 4 students, 8 minutes, in and out.
Jurors, 12 on the jury, and 3 alternates. The man who left Friday for a family emergency is no longer...
And keep in mind, Brian Koberger, he killed 4 people, no DNA except for on the sheet. So, for those that, keep reminding, there's no DNA on Richard Allen. Well, again, Brian Koberger, 4 people, no DNA except, on the sheet. He got careless.
On the jury. Stacy Bozanovsky works in the Indiana State Police Indianapolis Post Laboratory as a forensic scientist and DNA analyst. She conducted DNA analysis on Abby Williams and Libby German's bodies, as well as their clothes, blood at the crime scene, and cartridge recovered from the crime scene. Bozanovsky said she found DNA belonging to Libby and Abby on most of the crime scene samples she tested. Bozanovsky said it is very difficult to find DNA on a cartridge and did not find a sufficient amount of DNA on the cartridge.
Anybody, it's for those that aren't gun enthusiasts or like me, I'm not a big gun person. Cartridge is a bullet, another term for the bullet. For anybody that's wondering what the cartridge is, cartridge for further testing. The DNA result from that cartridge demonstrated an insufficient quantity of DNA for further analysis, Bozanovsky said. Bozanovsky said there was male DNA found at the crime scene. However, she said it is not unusual to find that, saying it come from the girl's clothing or environment. According to Bozanovsky, there is not DNA evidence to indicate Libby and Abby were assaulted. Bozanovsky said a swab from the tree sample showed blood consistent with Libby's DNA. DNA from the fibrous material found in Abby's hand was consistent with Kelsey German's DNA. So obviously, I don't think that was a surprise. I think we saw that coming. And again, it's like the defense had a mini opening, which they could have thrown some, something big for their defendant, just like how, opening statements, each side, is going to throw out, some of their big guns. Maybe not all, but, and the defense uses this hair, and they already knew it was a female hair. Maybe didn't know it was Kelsey's at the time. But of course they got tested before the trial. And so it just goes to show, like, they write this big check. It sounds good in the media. Unknown hair, because we didn't know it was female. And then when it comes out, we learn it's female. And then now it's allegedly Kelsey German's DNA. Because the sweater that Abby was wearing was from Libby. That was washed prior. And likely fibers from, obviously, Kelsey and the family transferred. Bozanovsky's testimony indicates that no DNA found at the crime scene is linked to Richard Allen. A DNA analysis is performed to individualize DNA to a specific person, according to Bozanovsky. Bozanovsky explained to the jury what DNA is and what a DNA analyst does. She said blood is an ideal source of DNA, while hair, skin cells, and urine are less ideal. So yeah,
testimony from Stacy Bozanovsky
Sorry, I want to pause that. Do you know if any of RA's confessions were taped and videotaped? Yes. Not all of them, but yeah, there's a lot. The ones with the mother and wife, they're recorded. Yeah, there's a bit. I don't want to say numbers, but yeah, there's definitely taped confessions. So that way it won't get twisted. Then there'll be some confessions that obviously they're going to call security guards. They're going to call some inmates for the prosecution that obviously spoke to Richard Allen, who Allen apparently at one point was just confessing to everybody that would listen. Exactly. And yeah, it could overpower very young girls, especially when you have a gun. I feel so bad for him. Knowing that one of them knew that they were going to die, but first had to watch their best friend die first. Well, then they bled out slowly. It's so terrible. And think if Richard Allen's not the right guy and they messed up, they'll never get justice because it's how much money they spend. So it's now or never. And long before Richard Allen came along, these girls and their family have been seeking justice for so many years. I got a family that's, I don't know, doing a lot outside my window. Hopefully you guys don't hear that. Yeah, I mean, that's Grandma. That's why I'm pulling up these visual timelines. I mean, I'm not manipulating these timelines, Grandma. what I just showed you there, earlier between the noon and 1:30, this is a linear path that Richard Allen is supposedly taking. If he was there from noon to 1:30, he should be on the bridge with the 4 juveniles. But there's no mention of that. Then we have Betsy Blair, who's walking up the side trail, just in case they want to argue, oh, well, maybe he sidetracked for a minute. There's no way without him running into Betsy Blair earlier, or he lied again and he wasn't on the Freedom Bridge, and God knows what he did between noon and 1:30. But he certainly didn't walk from the Freedom Bridge to the Monon High Bridge between noon and 1:30. I could play that over and over, and there's no way you can get Richard Allen to that Monon Bridge without running into those girls at the same time they're there. It doesn't make sense. And of course, I don't think Allen knew that, because of course he didn't know the witnesses' testimonies and didn't know that they took pictures of the bridge at 12:43. So, and I think he wanted to, make sure he's leaving at 1:30 when the killer's arriving. But then that makes no damn sense, because if he's leaving at 1:30 and he's parked at the CPS building, well, he should have ran right into Bridge Guy. And he should be the main witness right now for the killer. But that didn't happen. And that's why the defense now just kind of slides in their opening statements that now he allegedly is leaving at 2:15. He leaves the trails at 1:30, but he's not leaving until 2:15 in the car. What is he doing for 45 minutes? Again, they keep changing this timeline for him, and because they know it doesn't make sense. When you break it down, it doesn't make sense.
Continued after a short break.
I'm sorry, I get heated because I've seen no one be able to explain how Allen can get from one place to another without being seen by these witnesses that are there taking pictures, metadata. They're there. He said he had a phone with him, yet there's no geofence data. They can account for the other girls. There's geofence data. And then his phone from 2017. He keeps all his phones, but yet this phone from 2017 is missing. I mean, come on. There's too much.
A lot of DNA and get dirty, which is not great for DNA analysis.
I guess. Okay, I think this is when I have to start reading it here. And then I'll break all this down. I have, everything that they have, the main highlights of this morning. So, sorry, I kind of got interrupted. I have never seen, I always try to watch the other side to get their views, but I've never seen anybody be able to break down the timeline and make sense of his new, noon to 1:30.
Found at the crime scene is linked to Richard Allen. A DNA analysis is performed to indicate further analysis found at the.
Okay, so 10:15 testimony from Stacy continuing after short break. Shoes collected a lot of DNA and get dirty, is what she was saying, which is not great for DNA analysis, because obviously you're tracking a bunch of DNA, you're walking around. She said the water from the creek has potential to remove or dilute DNA, because obviously they had a bunch of items that they recovered from the creek. She said dirt and sunlight can also impact DNA, obviously degrade it. Stacy continued, one sample tested showed DNA from 3 people, an unknown male, oh God, and assumed DNA from Abby and Libby. That unknown male is going to end up being the crime scene tech, which we'll learn here in just a minute. Tree branches from the crime scene were tested at the ISP. DNA samples from 2 branches tested positive for blood for Libby. They claim that DNA is hard to transfer onto the branches and logs, and that's why they didn't take the sticks or logs, branches, whatever, in the first place. I do think that was a mistake. I still would have collected them right from the beginning. When asked why there wasn't DNA found on the cartridge, the bullet, she said it's a very small surface area and minimally handled. Then Jim Luttrell asked Stacy, did you find any DNA of Richard Allen on any of the items? No. I don't think that's a surprise. Obviously, we would have seen that in the probable cause affidavit if they had DNA on Richard Allen. Yeah, we'll talk about the hairs, of course. Okay, so we got a little bit more. So 11 and 10, court was back in session. Stacy started talking about the exhibits and described what seen. She was looking at 3 exhibits: a pink shirt, gray bra, and black bra. Points out blood on the pink shirt, tells the jury that the gray bra and black bra have possible blood on them. Both those bras were on Abby. She tells the jury that there were 2 strands of hair on a shirt. One was from Abby, and the other strand did not have enough DNA to identify. So that's one of them. The gray bra also did not have enough DNA to be conclusive. She continues to tell the jury that the black bra had 4 strands of hair, and none of them had enough DNA to be conclusive. Then she talks about the black Nike shoe that was found under Abby's back. She tells the jury there is hair on a shoe, which could be from an animal. So now that explains why we heard rumors about animal hair being tested and taken from potential persons of interest. So that's interesting. And that was on the shoe. That's interesting. She tells the jury, so probably maybe, a pet animal, maybe they had. She tells the jury that the blood on the shoe was partially Abby's, but the rest of the blood needed more analysis. Obviously, the shoe of Libby's was under Abby's back along with the phone, and obviously, because she was killed there, the blood soaked, and, when they removed the bodies, there was blood soaked under her, poor thing. The prosecution shows the jury blood swabs from around the area where the bodies were found, specifically from the ground and tree. 5 of the swabs were Libby's blood from the ground, and 2 were from Abby. More swabs were shown to the jury that had blood from Libby's index finger and pinky. So this one's interesting. The index finger and pinky. Let me write that down. We're going to come back to that, why that one's important. Index, pinky. Okay. The state shows the jury more clothing, including a sweatshirt, 2 socks, a green headscarf, tank top shirt, the other black Nike shoe, a pair of jeans, and a tie-dyed shirt, all recovered from the creek. And I'll get to chat here. 1 second, guys. Almost done. Oh. Stacy tells the jury the items from the creek impacted her analysis and degraded the DNA was that the samples had degraded and DNA was partially removed because of the creek. She tells that the Nike shoe was heavily soiled. This is the one that was found in the creek, but contained no blood or fluid. Only 1 swab from DNA only one swab had DNA, and that was determined to be Abby's. The pair of jeans from the creek had 2 swabs done, found to be mostly Abby's DNA, because that was Abby's genes, and a small amount of Libby's DNA on it. Stacy tells the jury that the tie-dyed shirt from the creek had many mud stains, but no blood or seminal fluid. It had 1 hair strand on it, but it did not have enough DNA on it to determine its source. She said the sweatshirt from the creek was cleaner than the other items in the creek, but no blood or seminal fluid was on it, so no DNA could be determined. On the pair of underwear found in the creek, she tells the jury there was no blood or seminal fluid found. She also told the jury she took swabs from the crotch area. This swab showed Abby's DNA, so this was Abby's underwear. This tells the jury the underwear were stained, but no blood. She tells the jury that the black sock from the creek had no blood, fluid, and she could not determine who the sock belonged to. She continues telling the jury that the pink sock found in the creek had no blood, fluid on it, and 3 hair strands on it, but she could not determine who they belonged to. She found a green scarf from the creek. She says that may have not been related to the timing of the crime scene. So that may have not related to the girls at all. May have just been there stuck in the creek. She tells the jury that the tank top, no blood, no fluid. A swab was taken to determine DNA from a partial profile. Prosecutors reference April 11, 2017 DNA report that reevaluated the black hooded sweatshirt and swab from iPhone. The jury is told the swab from the iPhone showed no blood. They could not make conclusions from the DNA. She tells the jury that 22 swabs were taken from the hooded sweatshirt, trying to avoid the blood. She says the first swab was consistent with an unknown male. Later tests showed the DNA came from the person who worked in the forensic lab. So, because I remember people going nuts saying, oh, here we have a unknown male, but it appears that that is from a person that worked in the lab. It was also noted that this person was told to make sure to wear protective gear when testing DNA. The other swabs on the hooded shirt showed DNA mostly from Abby and Libby. Stacy told the jury, I found more DNA on the sweatshirt, but she could not determine the profile. She says laundry mixes DNA profiles. So obviously this is the sweatshirt that was Libby's, that Abby's was wearing. Prosecution asked Stacy about July 11, 2017 report on swabs from tree branches. She tells the jury they were done at the ISP post in Lafayette, Indiana. She says she converted a conference room into an exam room there. She tells the jury... Alright guys, I'm going to get to chat here in a second. Oh, I got this going super slow. She tells the jury she examined branches for blood and skin cells and took several swabs and did lab testing at her main office. Okay. So that's what I had when I went live. I just want to show this. God, I feel bad for these people. And then I'm going to read chat here. Look at these poor people that got to do this. And then this is what happens because obviously I'm not a big fan of Judge Gull. I hate how their system is. They should do like lotto tickets, or you just get a ticket, first come, first serve. And, you know, when you get there, you get a ticket. And then once however many seats are there, then they're gone. And they keep those seats for the rest of the day. Unless there's seats open, and then they can, you know, hand out some more, whatever. Can you imagine doing this when it's like, I don't know. It's got to be cold, like 30s, 20s, maybe, I don't know about 20s, but 30s, 40s in the night. Look like someone's sleeping right there. Almost looks like a homeless camp. And then guess what you get? At 12:35 today in the courtroom, Special Judge Frangol called out people who were sleeping in the courtroom. Busted. I don't blame him. I feel terrible for him. I do not conduct, let me say this again. Quoted, I do not conduct court in your bedrooms. I would appreciate you not sleeping in my courtroom. Oh, these poor guys. You know, and that's all on her, you know. That's not their fault. That's on her. You know. These poor people, I feel bad for Murder Sheet. You know, they sounded horrible on like day 6 or 7 because, you know, they have to do a show. They have to write all these notes. They have to go there. They have to get there. Like, especially on the first day, people are getting there the day before, you know, and then you can't go to the bathroom. You can't eat. Once lunch comes, either you choose to eat or get back in line because you'll lose your seat because you don't keep it. And after lunch, everybody it resets the seating after lunch instead of, you know, keeping your original seats. It's a joke. So, yeah. Carrie Summers, becoming a member and supporting this channel. Thank you so much. It truly helps this channel. So God bless you, Carrie. Yeah, if you'd like to support this channel, there's many ways to do so in the chat or in the description. If by chance you send a Venmo or PayPal, just let my mods know so I can thank you during the live. But so this is what I had a couple hours ago. Obviously, I put shows together hours before I start the live, so there's probably stuff that's happened since now. So we're gonna check that. Oh, let me just show the. I don't know if this is exactly right. I need to go through this. So, then I have seen the 72 hairs. 2 of them did not have enough DNA to identify. I think it was more than 2. I got to go back. But I think there's 72 total hairs collected. I think that's right. She found 1 unknown male DNA. But of course, the unknown male DNA was from the lab tech guy. So that's misquoted there. Now, the unknown male is from the lab tech guy. There was other unknown profiles. But it doesn't say male or female. It just says that the DNA was either just not good enough or they just don't know. Let me double check. Well, let's see. You know, they usually will. Let's see if we can get a tally on this, a more accurate tally. Oh, and we have a new court sketch as well. Okay, so yeah, here, let's see. Yeah, so some partial profiles found, but not enough to compare. DNA from the unknown male was from the lab employee. Some hairs were found at the scene. 3 hairs were not consistent with Abby and Libby. Um, yeah, so there are definitely profiles, but there's no mention of male or female. They're just profiles that are not good enough to test, or if they test it, they no, that's the wrong box cutter. So I also wanted to mention something. Let's get caught up, and then I'm going to talk about the box cutter because I also had an idea. I'm like, why didn't the defense talk about Richard Allen? That was really strange. So there's the new court sketch, much better. Yeah, Stacy says I want the defense to put the three girls on our saw at noon. Yeah, right. There you go. That's an interesting way to put it, right? Yeah, where are these three girls? God, that's a great point, Stacy. Yeah, where are these three girls that saw Richard Allen? Obviously they should be able to be called in and testify. Yeah, that was Richard Allen there. Yeah, what? That's amazing. It's never even really thought about it that way, because I know another thing that the defense people are trying to say is there's another group of girls, yet, you would, of course, if they're girls, they're teenagers, they're going to have phones. So where's the geofence data for this other group of girls that would be wandering around? You would think at the very least one of them would have a phone. If there was another group of girls who were glued to their phones, right? Hey, that's such a great statement, Stacey. I totally agree. It's my pleasure, Jamie. Thank you for coming in. Sorry, I had to take a sip. Was the down the hill audio, was the guy's attitude down the hill, was it spliced together? What we heard in the public, yes, it was cut and edited. As a person who has edited, it's one thing I could say that I have expertise in is video editing. Yeah. And the reason why is because there is a metallic sound. Some say metallic sound. It is when the bridge guy is racking his gun. Obviously, in the early days, they want to keep all the details close to the vest. So obviously, they wanted to edit that out because after he says guys, a few words are said, and then he racks the gun shortly after he says guys. So they wanted that clipped out. That's why then they just put guys down the hill. But you can tell when you break down guys and down the hill, you can tell when guys is being said. You can hear the wind because obviously they're up on the bridge. That's why the recording is just crummy to begin with, because when he says guys, they're up on this bridge and there's wind blowing. Then it changes to down the hill, and now they're walking on the gravel, so you got this gravel sound, and you can hear it. So you can tell that there's, they've cut seconds out, and we could look at that as well. Why did they edit the audio? Because they just what I just said there. They wanted to edit out the cocked gun, and obviously they wanted to edit out the girls because I think that would just be traumatic if everybody's studying the video and the family has to keep hearing these poor girls, some of their last moments where they're being you know, obviously kidnapped or whatever you want to call it and ordered down a hill with a gun. And yeah, I don't blame him. Right. So that's odd. I didn't find Ari's phone. That's right. I'm sure Richard Allen's an honest guy. Even though he's given us a couple of different timelines, but his memory gets better over the years, where the rest of us it gets worse. Richardson family, thank you so much for the $20 super sticker. You are a legend. I appreciate that. God bless you. It's not the only time it's happened. I think that happens, we've heard it happen before. I think, remember, it's 2017, it's been like 7.5 years. There's been a lot of progress. I'm sure a lot of stuff has been updated. Remember, the read technique, that was when the whole read technique was being brought up, is in 2017. So, times have changed. But anyway, I wanted to talk about why didn't the defense mention Richard Allen? Like, why didn't they bring up, yeah, this is a family man, he served time in the National Guard, right? Army Reserves, one of the two, National Guard, learned how to use a gun, learned how to kill people. Then he worked at this local pharmacy. No, he was not a pharmacist. Probably. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh, yeah, they probably don't want to mention that, he wasn't a pharmacist, because that sounds good in the media because they keep mentioning that. But he's not a pharmacist. He's a shift supervisor. And one of the tools he works with is, wait for it, which one did I put it under? There's that one. Did I move them? Did I move my... What did I do with my little box cutters? There they are. They, probably didn't want to mention that, he worked in retail, and what retail usually, in that line of work, because I did 8 years plus, I've worked with so many box cutters, including that one, not as much as the other ones. And yeah, probably wanted to leave that detail out. So it makes me wonder why that could be one of the reasons why they may not have wanted to bring up Richard Allen, even though you would think if he was innocent, you would want to humanize him. Or humanize him, that's not the right word, but, make him relatable to the jury, that he's just another, person, family man who works job, has family, and yeah. I haven't heard anything about his daughter attending the trial. I hope she doesn't, because, no matter what happens, she's a young person. Obviously, people's lives get destroyed very easily on the internet. CR, God bless you. Thank you so much for the $3 super sticker. Let me see here. Okay. And then thank you to one person. They remained anonymous. Thank you so much for the PayPal. It really helps us because we spend a lot of time here putting everything together. Let's look to see if we got some updates. Usually it should be back by lunch, and we should have some updates. Oh, the pinky and finger. We're going to talk about that. Let me check. That one's G. That's 13. Let's see what we got here. I'm assuming there's going to be...
What does it mean to live better? At proof?
The cross-examination by the defense eventually. I'm going to be honest. I would have probably left this DNA expert out. I really don't know where this helps the prosecution in any way. I'll be honest with that. I don't see where it helps. Well, yeah, I can see where it helps Richard Allen because there's no DNA connected to him. So I agree with that. So again, I think this isn't really a big, as far as right now, anything as far as prosecution, I really don't see this being like anything major. And of course, I know they're going to probably bring up, when it comes to the defense, they're going to ask her, remind us, was there any DNA found of Richard Allen? They'll say no. Let me just remind you again, Brian Kohlberger allegedly killed 4 college students in 8 minutes. No DNA that we know of. Except for what he left on the sheath. So, again, I think it comes down to if you're wearing gloves, clothing, stuff like that. Yeah, there's no other group of girls. Exactly. 61 false confessions? No, 61 confessions. Then there's the other, I think they said up to 100 confessions. Of course, I'm assuming those other ones are going to be the false ones because, of course, I'm assuming his defense came in there and, had to do damage control and, maybe said, maybe start acting a little kooky. And then start just confessing about random stuff that is not correct that happened in the at the crime scene. Sorry, I'm just seeing if okay, I'm going to talk about the pinky here in just a second. Okay. All right. So we got a couple of big things to go over. Hey, Carol, good to see you. God bless you. Yeah, again, when speaking to somebody that's obviously much smarter than me and was a crime scene tech, he's retired. It's one thing for one person not to leave any DNA, but the more people you have, the more likely there is DNA going to be left behind because there's going to be mistakes made. So that's why this whole oldness thing, that they're being abducted and then brought back. There's so many issues where DNA would be transferred, and again, just the more people, the more likely you're going to leave some kind of DNA. Okay, so let's talk about the pinky. trigger warning, of course. Okay, sorry, I've got a lot. Oh, there it is. It's right after. There we go. So, of course, they originally said that this was an F tree, but when you really examine it, it's not an F. It's really like an upside down L. Interestingly enough, one of the experts that testified believed that Abby had likely, obviously, got attacked. Maybe the first blow to her neck, obviously grabbed her wound, which anyone would do, then was close to this F tree, and maybe to kind of gain her balance, she placed her hand on the tree and likely had made an upside down L, and then came in contact it maybe once or twice more, leaving these almost little fingerprint type stains. Almost all of them are a vertical line, not horizontal, and that is due to blood running down and just her trying to, sadly kind of brace herself, which is just terrible to think about.
Brian Bunner said he has been with Indiana State Police for 20.
And then the other thing I think it's so fascinating is, they want to bring up that all these witnesses could not identify Bridge Guy, right? But yet, Bridge Guy is wearing all these layers on. The witnesses that are at the... I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it to where...
manner.
Actually, let me do
And
this one here. There we go. That's what I was trying to look for. Of course, I've gone over this. This is Alan's own statement, 2/16/17. 2 days after the murder, he sent in a tip saying that he was there from 1:30 to 3:30. Saw 3 females. He ran into those 3 females at the Freedom Bridge. He did not speak to them, which aligns with what they said, but this is what they had to work with. This is what they had to work with. How in the hell are they going to identify Richard Allen? And this is one thing that people always forget, is that it's not like these girls knew that a killer is going to be walking past them, right? So they're going to be like, oh, we got to make sure, we remember, we get ready because a killer's going to be walking past us. It's just like me asking you, hey, do you remember that person you passed as you were walking out with your groceries and that guy walked in? Are you going to be able to describe him in, exact details? And I guarantee you that same person that ran into him on aisle 9 who just walked past him briefly, or if he was coming around the corner, and she was coming around the other corner. So it's just a brief, like half-second interaction. And then both of those two witnesses try to give a description. I guarantee you they're going to be so different. Maybe some similarities. But I doubt, especially in a grocery store, unless it was COVID days, that these girls had to give a description where a guy has got a stocking cap or a hat and some kind of thing up to his nose that you really only got this much to describe the guy. Of course they're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, this is the defendant. This is the guy who I saw. Again, these poor girls had no idea that they were going to be, strolling past this monster who has his head down, got all these layers on that I'm sure add some inches to what it would appear to be a little bit high, a taller height. And then again, I'm 6'3". If there was somebody that's close to my height, I could probably give somewhat of an accurate description. But if they were much taller or shorter, I'm sure I would be way off. One more thing to mention here.
Said they went time away at 30 p.m. At least along with.
Let me get to chat here. Just one second.
Forensic surgery. She's telling Sunday.
Dr. Allen's home had been.
Oh, I know what I wanted to show. Okay. Let me get to chat. Let me pull this up while this is something that was brought up by a former, I don't know if he was a detective, but I think he worked as an officer at the very least. Something I found very fascinating. That never occurred to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is genius. Now, keep in mind, I'm 6'3". I'm a tall person. I have never had to worry about having pants that are longer than my legs because I'm tall. If anything, I have the opposite problem where I might end up with floods or something like that. Oops, damn. Okay. And so I got to give credit before. Hey, Chris, I missed you for a week. I've missed everybody. Thank you so much, Carol. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Man, I cannot tell you how much this helps out this channel because we've been going at it nonstop. Cynthia De La Fuente, I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. God bless you. There you go, Andrew. Yeah, right. If this solitary confinement is causing people to go nuts and confess, how come we don't hear all the people that are thrown in solitary confinement confessing? We're going to hear apparently in one of the statements or confessions that, and I think it's a conversation that he has with one of the family members, mother or wife, that it's not the guards that are giving him problems. It's the lights that are on 24/7 and the prison guards who were kind of heckling him, which, in my opinion, when you come in as a person accused with that, You know, kind of, you know, there's a code. I just think he's lucky to be alive, and that's probably a good thing they kept him in some kind of solitary confinement, or if he was kept at some local county jail, you know, maybe somebody wanted to become famous and, you know, get to him and kill him. And then nobody would have gotten justice. Or the proper justice, anyway, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, no, he was tortured because some of these guards were wearing odorous patches. So one of the things I wanted to mention, I mentioned this in my members live, but I thought this was great. This was observed, again, this photo and video has been studied a million times, but it's funny. I've never heard anyone really mention this. So I found a video on YouTube. I'm sure there's many up there. About a guy that's short, about Alan's height. And, well, he's got an issue because he's got short legs because he's a shorter man. And the biggest issue he has is pants having this bunch up issue going on because obviously it's tough to find proper pants that don't sag or don't have this baggage going on, the scrunching, whatever you want to call it. We can see the bridge guy has the same exact issue going on. You can see it on both legs where there's a lot of you know, kind of scrunching there, showing you that that is likely a shorter person. And the same thing with his arms. He's got, looks like a coat that's a little bit bigger for him. And maybe as being a short person, he's got shorter arms. So the sleeves don't, obviously, it's got him bunched up a little bit. But I thought that was a very interesting observation that I've never really heard anyone say before. Not to say that I'm sure somebody hasn't brought it up, but I find that very interesting. But yeah, let me know what you think in chat. But I thought that was very fascinating that, you know, you've got this scrunching going up here with Bridge Guy. All right. Before I look at chat, let's see what we got. I'm really looking forward to the confessions. I feel like the DNA witness, I feel like maybe they should have put her off to the side or something. I really don't know where that helps the prosecution. I would say anything at the end of the day, this is going to be a win for the defense. I wouldn't say it's like a huge win, but I would say that's kind of, I would give the defense the win unless there's something that comes out before the day ends. Yeah, they said up to his nose, so yeah, I mean, you've got this little much. Yeah, how are these girls going to be able to point, say, oh, that's him? Because all of them, he's either covered up or you have the one that's driving past and, you know, Ooh, let's see what the defense diaries say. Two of the most interesting results was a hair found on Abby's pinky was determined to be by Stacy to be consistent with Kelsey. Of course, no surprise there. Unspent cartridge swabbed and no DNA profile. Okay, nothing shocking there. Okay, let me recap this. Read chat and
Wake up ready to tackle your next adventure with the Ghost Bed RV mattress.
Let's see
Sleep
if
in
there's,
style and
geez,
enjoy
that's
luxurious
loud, I'm
comfort
sorry.
with 4 layers of premium materials perfectly sized for your RV.
Just a half day in court today for day 8 of the Delphi murders trial, and the jury only heard from one witness. It was 2 years ago today that police arrested Richard Allen for the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. One of the lead investigators today talked about his interview with Richard Allen around the time he...
That's day 8. Alright, I'm just reading this. Okay, that's all the same. Okay. Let me just leave this up so I can read chat here. Oh,
Teenage girls, Abby Williams and Liberty German, had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge, which was supposed to be a teenage hangout with a historic trail and a
Prosecuting.
He was on the trails between
them.
don't forget the witness that they haven't brought to testify that said he looked like Jimmy Duvall. I mean,
2006 Ford 500 and a 2000
Richard Allen.
Right out of the gun.
5 years old. It's not
We heard from the officer
Said that
exchange with investigators.
Let me leave that timeline up. So, again, because I would love to anybody to make a timeline and put Richard Allen in here and tell me where. Hey, Allen, good to see you, buddy. And tell me where's he at? Where's Richard Allen? He's supposed to be there. We've got girls. We've got Betsy Blair. You know, right now he should be walking, heading to the Monon High Bridge, according to him. But he's not there. So, again, where is Richard Allen? Again, all I can say is, where is Richard Allen? They are, and apparently he's... So one of the things is apparently Richard Allen, before the jury started the trial, you know, the hearing in July where we heard a little bit about the confessions and the box cutter, which I think was huge, and maybe one of the reasons why they didn't want to talk about Richard Allen's work history and mention that, yeah, he worked at Walmart, because guess what you do at Walmart? He was like a shift supervisor. Guess what he worked with? He worked with box cutters. Then he went to CVS. He was working in, I think, Mexico or Peru. He kind of jumped around and then eventually went to Delphi. He was a ship supervisor. Again, one of his main jobs is using a box cutter. I think they wanted to leave that out. Also, I'm sure they probably wanted to leave out that he had a military background, knowing that he is familiar with guns and how to handle them. And at the very least, you're kind of taught to, take somebody's life and all that stuff. What time was Richard Allen's car leaving? Again, that's such a great question, Miss Ladybug. They say 2:15 he's leaving his car. So here's the other thing that I thought was so interesting, right? Let me skip this for a minute. We'll come back to this. Here's another thing that's very interesting. Nope. Oh, that's okay. There it is. Okay. Look at when they see the Ford comment. 2:14, right? 2:14. 2:13 is when the girls are getting attacked. And coincidentally, he's leaving at 2:15. So he's leaving right when there's a Mercury comet and just a minute after these poor girls are getting abducted. But again, where is he leaving? Because from what I understand, they keep wanting to attack these witnesses that are seeing vehicles at the CPS building, which tells me they're claiming he's parked there. But if that is true,
just arrest us, see.
Again, he would have been here. It's 12:20. He would have had to been already walking to the bridge, either in front or behind these girls. Then you also have Betsy Blair here, who also is kind of like almost like a security guard or mall cop who's watching these two linear paths. And yet, again, I know I mentioned this many times before, but again, I want to see somebody from the defense explain to me where is Richard Allen? How can you get him to this bridge and not be seen except until Betsy Blair, or no, excuse me, no, because Betsy Blair would come after. But yet none of these girls see him except for when he runs into a group of 3 girls at the Freedom Bridge in the beginning. Again, it falls apart.
Trails, sometime before noon that day. They would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back. They would run into somebody who they believe could have been the suspect.
So, Grandma Shirley, and I do appreciate being a member and supporting this channel. Maybe, we don't agree on on this case, and maybe agree on other cases. And that's going to happen. I have a lot of viewers that they don't... hey, we got Sleuthy Goosey in here. I just want to say, Sleuthy, I know you're more pro-defense. I do appreciate your work, though. I think the stuff that I've seen, it seems like you take great work in your, putting statements and timelines. You are amazing. You put some amazing things together in other cases. I've been very impressed. I just want to say that, Sleuthy Goosey, I'm sorry. They say they see what's allegedly his car driving westbound at 147. The defense isn't attacking the witness who saw the car at the CPS building. She's going to testify for them that one car was there and not his. They see... Don't you mean at 127? Maybe that was a typo. Because this car's seen at 127 going westbound. And then he's going to park at 130 there. Defense isn't attacking the witness who saw a car at the CPS building. She's going to testify for them that one of the cars was there and not his. Right. And maybe you just missed kind of earlier what I was talking about. The issue with that is we have one witness who sees a purple... let me move this over. Because I do like Suthi. Because I've seen her debate, and, you know, I have respect for her. I have respect for a lot of people. But I've seen her do some work on other cases, and she's done an amazing job. But yeah, 210, you see the purple SUV in the PCA affidavit. But again, so 210, the Mercury Comet, which is going to be Betsy Blair, which can be brought back so she can say, yeah, I saw this car at 214. But then 14 minutes later, you've got another guy that's driving westbound who is going to see a similar to a dark smart car. What's interesting about the smart car and the PT Cruiser are both hatchback-like cars, and they use the word similar to. So again, to me, it just negates the car that's seen in the middle, because 14 minutes later, there's a smart car. I don't think a smart car looks anything like a Mercury Comet. So, the other issue I have is, maybe you missed this, but if Richard Allen is now there from noon to 1:30, and I don't care where he parks at the CPS building or he parks over here, eventually he's going to be walking. We know once you're at the Freedom Bridge, it's 20 to 25 minutes from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. It's not 9 minutes, because that was highly misquoted. And if that's true, and Richard Allen walked this linear path, he should have ran right into these 4 juvenile witnesses who are going to get there at 12:43 and start snapping photos. And they're going to be there for about approximately 17 minutes. He had to have run into those girls for this 12 to 1:30 timeline to work. There's just no way. Unless now he's going to change his... maybe not his timeline, but where he went. Maybe he didn't went to the bridge at all, and now he's walked somewhere else. But you've got Betsy Blair who's walking around. Now it's going to leave. Keep in mind, at 1:15, if Allen parked at the CPS building, why didn't Betsy Blair say, oh yeah, I saw, some black Ford Focus parked here? Because Richard Allen should have been parked there at the CPS building. Again, another discrepancy.
Trails, sometime before noon that day.
I mean, there's just so much, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on. There's just a lot I could throw in. I do have a lot of respect for Sleuthie, because I've seen her work on other cases, and she does some really detailed timelines, and I do have a lot of respect. Yeah, but that's what we talked about. Where are these 3 girls? And so that's why I say Betsy is a huge witness, because Betsy, if you look at it, Betsy does 3 loops that day, right? And if Betsy is on her second loop at this 12:35. She is now going to be walking to the Freedom Bridge. Wouldn't she have walked into these three girls? Because she goes to the Freedom Bridge and then turns around. Again, at the very end, forget the girls. At the very end, in my opinion, forget the girls. Alan is going to go to the bridge. He's got to be there by 12:30, or by at the very latest 12:50, right? No matter whoever he passes, he claims he goes to the Monon Bridge. But you've got these four juveniles there. He has to run into, I know I keep repeating myself, but it's like he'd have to run into these four juveniles at the bridge if he got there from noon to 1:30. So that's just my big argument. Oh, I'm sorry, Sleuthie.
Trails. Sometime before noon that day, they would walk to the bridge, then turn around and begin to walk back. They would run into somebody who they believe could have been the suspect.
Let me turn off these ads real quick. What's going on here?
This is the road the killer likely took just before parking at an abandoned building known as the CPS building.
Why doesn't that save? Insert. No. There we go. All right. I apologize. I did have some ads on.
There is a working camera on this building here.
Again, at the very end, Sleuthie, I wish we could have a good debate, because if anybody that's a great debater and is respectful, because I've seen her debate with some people that were eventually very rude, and I thought she kept her composure, and I have a lot of respect for that. So but at the end of the day, you have a guy that admitted being there originally, saying 1:30 to 3:30. 5.5 years later, where, most of us, our memories get worse over time, yet now in this interview, he says he's there from noon to 1:30? I mean, doesn't that seem a little fishy? You would think his memory would be better. And irregardless, he says he's wearing the stuff that Bridge Guy wore. I know a lot of people could say jeans. That's an obvious thing that people are going to wear. They confiscate 23 phones, yet the phone that he supposedly had is not there. The 2017 phone. Of course, a car being seen at 127. There's just a lot. There's nothing, in my opinion, that's just like, oh, damn, okay, this has got me thinking. This is why I like overhead visual timelines, because it really shows where people are at. And I'm not saying this is one-to-one recreation accurate, but it's a pretty good example of where the people are at. And again, he supposedly has his phone, but yet there's no geofence data. And yeah, there's just a lot, of course, I could go at. See, and that's what I thought. I'm like, maybe he tried to park over at this, one of the parking lots over by the, before the Freedom Bridge. But either way, he says he goes to the Freedom Bridge, then he goes to the High Bridge. And if he's there at noon, you would maybe add on, if he was at the Freedom Bridge, that's 20 to 25 minutes. Maybe that takes 10 minutes if he came from here. So 30 to 35 minutes So that would be 12:35, and guess what? Saving 40 minutes, 12:40, and if he walked to the bridge and he took him about 40 minutes, same thing. He runs into these girls who take pictures. They have metadata, and Richard Allen's not there. I know I keep repeating this, but if there's anybody I'd love to debate, Sleuthy, because I know she's, she looks at both sides. I've seen it happen, so I do respect that. Yeah, and then who are these three girls? Why didn't they come forward again? Like, you would think that the defense would go on
trails.
Well,
sometime before noon.
This is what I said earlier. Maybe you missed it, Sleuthy. We know girls and teenagers. Obviously, I'm a male, but we know teenagers love their phones, right? So if there was another set of three teenage girls, I'm pretty sure at the very least one of them has a phone. That way, just like with Libby and with these girls, they have phones, so that way they're being tracked and the parents know where they're at. We know that they did a geofence that day from I don't know, I'm just guessing, noon to 6, whatever, noon to, a certain timeline. Remember, people are getting called, because they were getting, obviously, I'm assuming from the geofence data. I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that's how they figured out where people were at that day, or that they were there that day. So why haven't we heard of three girls, at the very least one of the three girls getting contacted or shown up on the geofence, period? So that's just another argument. One more thing I noticed is, and this is just another channel, they were attacking Sarah Carbaugh, saying that, she just wants attention. And that really pissed me off, because one of the more credible witnesses, at least according to the people that are there, was Sarah Carbaugh. They felt like she was very honest. She didn't want to be there. She didn't want to be a part of this in the first place. It took her 3 weeks to come forward. And as there's a certain channel that said, well, she just wanted to insert herself into this. But yet, keep in mind, they knew that she was there because she drove past the Hoosier Harv store. So her vehicle is caught on camera. So no matter what, this guy's claiming that she just came forward to get attention, but yet her car is seen driving at 357, where she's going to see bridge guy seconds later walking westbound. So anyway, I just had to bring that up because I thought that was just so ludicrous to downgrade a witness who clearly didn't even want any part of this, period, but then flip it to say that she's trying to get attention when that was clearly the opposite. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. God bless you guys. I appreciate everybody in here. And for those that may view the other side, I totally respect. But, I've kind of formed my opinion after looking into this case for 3.5, 4 years. And when you have a guy that just admits being there, and then we haven't even heard the confessions, and then the box cutter thing. I've worked with box cutters. That's probably what we'll finish up with the box cutter, and I'll explain why that is so devastating, in my opinion. Yeah, I would like to know where he walked after that. Yeah, it's like he disappeared out of thin air. I agree with that, but but we know she was there, right? Because obviously, hopefully we can get the records and we'll see her car driving past. I'm sure she's got a unique car, and we'll see her at 357. But yeah, we don't see Bridge Guy on that video camera. Did he cut into the woods? Most likely not, because we know that the girl's family was kind of starting to form up here. So he probably went up north and around. And that would make sense, because if you were the killer and wasn't expecting somebody to be driving by, I'm sure I would have probably dipped for this open area. But yeah, it is interesting that he just kind of disappeared. I agree with that. Yeah, let me just talk about the box cutter real quick, and then let's see if there's any updates. Just because I have a little experience with box cutters, and not, of course, not using on people, of course, but what am I doing? But let me just give you an idea of, and I've shown this example, but again, this really kind of hits home. I should have made the neck bigger. Okay, we'll just say that's the neck here. I know that's a big neck, but I'm not known for my art. Okay, so this is why the pathologist had thought maybe two blades could have been used, because one was a clean cut, but one was a serrated edge, right? And here we go. And what's very interesting is there are so many versions of box cutters, right? I showed you guys, for those that have been here, I've showed you guys the kind of box cutters that I've used. They didn't have the thumb guard on them. These ones are nice and fancy. But they noticed with the wounds that, so here, they noticed with the wounds that they would get one cut, but then they would get another cut that was, so one was clean, one had this kind of serrated more edge cut. And they noticed that and one of the words he used, it was parallel. Well, what's interesting is this box cutter, and if we find out that this is the box cutter that they use at CVS, then my God, that, to me, that's going to be the silver bullet, in my opinion. Let me pull up one more thing here. So I think what likely happened, so we can see without the blade sticking out, we have this thumb guard, right? You push your thumb down on this and you cut boxes, and you have that, and you have the thumb guard that's right here, and you put your thumb on this area. That gives you pressure, right, as you're cutting boxes. Before, box cutters I used, it was like thin like this, and I actually had to use my pointer finger, and that was the pressure, and I would cut open. The thumb obviously is much bigger. You can get more force. You're closer to the blade, and you can obviously cut deeper and all that. Now, with the blade sticking out, if we were to spin this razor blade and look at it straight, there would be probably a gap. I'm going to say 1/4 inch, maybe less, maybe a little more, somewhere in there, right? So what happens is you start cutting with the box cutter. And so let's say if he's right-handed and he is going from right to left. And so the blade would be on the bottom. So the blade would have a nice smooth cut. But this part, because even though it's not a razor blade, it's still very thin and it's metal. And guess what? It's got teeth like a serrated blade. And so what happens is it's going to cut parallel to this line, because once you start going into the skin, this part is going to now enter in as well. And that is where you get the serrated part. That's what my interpretation is. Again, I'm not an expert in any of this other than just box cutters. I'm assuming that's what the pathologist is trying to say. And I think that's genius. He said that he was looking at a toolbox recently, and he must have seen a box cutter like this. And if we look up box cutters, this is why I think this will be huge, because so many different box cutters have been designed over the years. This is the one that I used for a long time. That one here. Very simple. This is more of a common one that people are used to. You can't see it. That's a little more common one. Then we have ones with the guard. Like so, where you place your thumb down on that one. And what's interesting, as I worked in retail, I worked at Albertsons for 8 years. We used the same box cutter all 8 years, this one here. Because they usually order them from a company called Uline. That's a pretty popular place. But they'll, of course, usually have the same kind of box cutter. And they usually will have a deal with that vendor or whatever company. And so if it comes to find out they use these kind of box cutters, I'm telling you, that is going to be, I'm not going to say game over, but that is going to be very big. And of course, we heard that Alan allegedly confessed using box cutters. Sorry to go on for so long, but yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could debate everybody that's on the other side, but I'd be jumping everywhere. And I really just trying to, update on what's going on during the trial. But again, I just think...
Wake up ready to tackle your next...
There could be a bombshell coming with the box cutter. Okay, sorry guys. I'm just looking to see if there's any updates. Not seeing anything. Seems like it's just going to be this one witness all day. It's a little kind of boring. I really wish they start getting into the confessions. I really don't know why they brought this lady in. It certainly doesn't help in my opinion, it certainly doesn't help the prosecution. Probably, it's just another kind of, hey, there's no DNA on Richard Allen, and you got to give him to that. Yeah, anybody that's worked in retail could probably agree. Usually that retail that you work for, and if you use box cutters, they have usually will have a deal with a certain company or whatever box cutter company, or they just order the same ones because they get a certain deal for ordering so many or whatever. But yeah, there's so many box cutters nowadays that and those thumb guards are not the most, I wouldn't say the most common, but they're unique for sure. Blunt? You don't think that wouldn't cut into skin? That you don't think that box cutter would cut into skin? That thing's not very wide. I've used that box cutter before. Just the guard itself, that guard is very thin. If I were just to slice at you with that box cutter without the blade out, I probably would cut you open with the thumb guard. I guarantee it. If that's what you're saying. I guarantee you that would easily cut into somebody with the proper force. That guard is intentionally blunt? That guard is not very wide, guys. Now I don't know why I'm not finding the box cutter that I want. Wonder if I can find a 361. Or I can flip it. I'm going to buy one of these. I'm just going to order one of these to show you guys. I've used this thing. When my blade got, because I hate these ones because you have to usually have like some kind of screw to unlock them. So, yeah, this thing is thin. You tell me a piece of metal like this, about this thin, if I didn't swipe at you with enough force, you don't think I'm going to cut into your skin? I'm sure, I guarantee it, especially when you're already cutting into the other person's skin. I guess that's just subject display. I think what I need to do is get that box cutter and go at it with a piece of fruit or something that's somewhere the thickness of skin. And I guarantee you that with enough little bit of force, that will cut into something. Yeah, and I can see that where that's going to the fence saying, oh, how convenient that he's saying box cutter when there's a box cutter confession. But, who knows if the doctor actually heard that or not, but I'll have to see. The serrated edge, that's right there. This, let's see. Sorry, I'm going to just pull one. This is probably not the best serrated blade to use, but kind of get the hint. This is probably not the best one. I would say like the K-bar would be a better match. But serrated teeth. Serrated teeth. Guess what? That has... What is going on? That has a tooth. That's your serrated part. Right there. That's why I keep highlighting this. Remember, he said the cuts are parallel. Multiple cuts, parallel. One line, one serrated. Do you think the killer just decided to take one non-serrated blade and then one serrated blade and happened to get a parallel cut multiple times? It would be interesting. This would probably be the deal breaker. They do the math between the distance between the blade. Obviously, I'd have to find I need to just order this blade. I'm sure there's a gap between the blade itself when it's sticking out and the guard. And then if the wounds are within that degree of, like a half inch, a quarter inch, eighth inch cut between the serrated and the clean cut, that would be my guess. Yeah, I've used those. I would use this tip when my blade got dull. I would use this because I'm like, I just don't want to go find a screwdriver. I'm not sure if this one's the screwdriver one or the flathead. That's why I hated these box cutters, because you always had to use like a flathead or I don't know. Some of them you don't have to, but yeah, I would just use this to open up boxes. I'd just use this little end right here. No, I don't think Abby had two cuts. I think she just had one gaping cut open. And that was right to left, and that came from likely behind. I think whoever attacked Abby likely came from behind. It was a right to left on her right. Let's see. Yeah, left side, right to left. Because when you cut into somebody, you have more force when you're coming in and less force when you're coming out. So that's how they can tell which is right to left, because there's more damage at the beginning, less damage because you're cutting in and out. So she was cut, so it's almost like she got blindsided behind. Yeah, and I think I might know somebody that's already tried that experiment. Probably well, I don't want to say succeeded, but yeah, that's my theory on that. Again, just the box cutter alone, with Richard Allen working in a retail, that's pretty huge. Again, I would just like to know anybody who wants to break down this timeline and tell me where's Allen and how is he not seen by the group of 4 girls at the bridge. I would love to see that. And then why is the defense saying now he's leaving at 2:15? Like,
sometime before noon that.
Again, the timeline keeps changing conveniently for Richard Allen. Why is that? It doesn't make sense. Oh, thank you so much, Tina Moose. Again, I don't know everything. I'm sure I probably got some things wrong. I'm not perfect. I get things wrong all the time. I kept saying that she had a 5S phone. It's actually a 6S phone. But yeah, one cut on Abby, likely from behind. No, if it's on her left side, let's see, I'm trying to think. What was it? We had it. Now I have to go back and look at that. Now that's going to bug me. Here's the autopsy. I'm pretty sure... 'cause that's the left side. On the right side. I've got information overload. It seemed like... oh, here we go. I have it right here.
Mortis.
Here we go.
Core said Libby's 3. Pass. It is more a bridge. Executing a said the 2 evidence or neck.
There it is. Okay, so cut was made on her left side. It was right to left. Yeah. So if I'm looking at her, this is her left side. This is her left side. So I'm looking at her. He said the cut was right to left. So, yeah, that would be right-handed. Because obviously now if I'm behind you, even though... Yeah, I guess that depends. Because, yeah, when you're looking at the autopsy, that would be her left side, right? Left side, right side. And then the cut was made right to left, almost like it was going outside. So I guess it just all kind of depends on which way you're facing your victim, really. So that's what it is. So I still think it's a right-handed person. Because obviously if you're standing behind him, it's their right side, even though they're standing the other way if you're behind them and they're not looking at you. But when they do the autopsy and they laid him down, this is obviously her left side. So either he came from the side or behind, cut, surprised her, and that was it. Yeah, the cut the guard makes is serrated, right. People make it sound like it's some like big wide thing. The thing is like probably this wide, like you're, you know, and with the right force, you can cut into somebody, especially since it's got the tooth on it. I think that probably would obviously help. Anyway, so yeah, that gets kind of confusing when you're kind of thinking right, left, depending on what way you're coming from behind them. So, anyway, yeah, I appreciate it. I'm sorry I've been getting off track a little bit. I like having people in here with other ideas, and I do appreciate Suthi because I've seen her work in other cases, and she is really good at taking notes. Although I disagree. But we can agree to disagree. We're adults. I don't know what they're trying to say. I'll be honest, Luthi. I guess that depends on. This is why we need transparency, so we can kind of get more on board on what the hell is going on. You know, I try to listen to both sides because after I get done live, of course, I'm going to listen to Webster. I'll listen to Andrea a little bit. Andrea. She goes on a lot bit longer. I listen to Murder Sheets. Because there's always, you know, stuff that people are going to miss. But, yeah, at the very end of the day, we need the transcript so we, you know, can all kind of... Because, you know, obviously, there's been so much misinformation out there.
Wake up ready to tackle.
Just like the glitter thing, you know. The girls down the hill, obviously, there's been a lot of misreporting going on.
Wake up ready to tackle your next adventure with the Ghost Bed RV mattress.
Oh, you're killing
Sleep
me.
in style and enjoy luxurious comfort with 4 layers of premium materials
Where are you?
perfectly sized for your RV, camper, or trailer. It's all of the comfort and cooling features that Ghost Bed mattresses are known for. Plus,
These ads are terrible. Anyway, oh, we actually have an update. All right, let me go over this last bit. We actually finally have, this will probably be the last part of the day. Okay, so now the defense is going to go through. All right, let me get a sip. I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm sorry, guys. I appreciate it. I am going to buy one of those box cutters. I'm going to buy a bunch of different fruit. I'll have to buy a hog or something, and I'll cut into stuff, and I will show you guys that part of the thumb guard will cut into stuff. I've used that thumb guard not to cut into people, though, but I've used it to just open up boxes, because it's like your key. Thinking about it, it's like the size of your key. And we know that if you poke somebody at a key, you're going to puncture them. You can puncture people with a key. So if you can puncture people with a key, you can puncture somebody with that guard. Should have used that a long time ago. That was probably much better. Okay, so now we are on to the defense. Defense attorney Jennifer Auger began cross-examination. Auger asked Stacy about the DNA testing of the rootless hair. So obviously, if hair doesn't have root, it's much harder. They can do mitochondrial DNA, but it all kind of depends on the hair, you know. Stacy said it can help detect DNA in the shaft of the hair follicle. Stacy said the root of the hair is not necessary with technology called SNP. It's a new tool to add to our technologies, Stacy said. Auger asked if it was a reliable tool to help solve crimes. Stacy said it's possible, although it's only used now in cases involving remains in genealogy. Auger said she and Rosie interviewed Stacy at the ISP lab over the summer. Auger asked, "Do you have any hairs left from the Delphi investigation?" She estimated there was probably 72 hairs remaining. Could the hairs have been subjected to additional testing? Stacy said yes, but they were not. Stacy said the decision was made not to test them at the time. Auger said, "This is the time Richard Allen is now on trial," which I agree. Auger then highlighted a hair found at the crime scene. Auger said Stacy didn't test for possible DNA match with the victim's family until 2 weeks before the trial. Okay, that's the hair obviously found in Abby's hand, which now we know is Kelsey's. Stacy said investigators thought the perpetrator was a male, so that's what they were focused on, obviously, because the female hair, no female persons of interest. At the discretion of whatever investigators submit. Stacy continues, "I don't tell them how to do their jobs." Stacy said she had reason to believe it was a male perpetrator based on case history. She said she has given hundreds of DNA standards for the case, but only one of them was female. Okay, which would be probably the hair. Auger asked Stacy could determine how many people were in some kind of mixed samples. It's kind of worded weird. She said she could not. Auger asked if the DNA found on the sweatshirt could have been from a state police investigator. She said it's possible. OJ asked if anyone else touched the sweatshirt in the lab. She said only her. OJ asked Stacy, when you tested clothing from Richard Allen's house, did you find any DNA from Abby or Libby? No, I didn't find any DNA profiles consistent with Abby or Libby. OJ said that Stacy tested Allen's blue Carhartt jacket, his black boots, and his knives. She said yes. OJ said that nowhere was there any DNA from Libby or Abby. She said that's correct. OJ said there was enough material on the cartridge, that's the bullet, to develop a DNA profile for anyone. OJ said there was nothing biological or serological linking Richard Allen's DNA to Libby or Abby, despite all of the time and effort Stacy has put into the case. There was no DNA results consistent with Richard Allen. Oh, then it goes back to Goal talking about sleeping in the courtroom. Well, we can't blame them when they're got to sleep outside and they can't take bathroom breaks or eat. Sorry, guys. Let me get to chat here 1 second. So they must have finished up because that's 4:34. Okay, jury's had a so one jury. Okay, following a few questions from prosecution and defense, the jury chimed in with questions about protocol was in place at the lab and how evidence is stored. And then she finished at 2:50. Oh. Now we have a new DNA person. Okay, so there's still more. So now we have former CSI crime scene investigator Major Pat Cicero. Cicero is from the LaPorte County Sheriff's Major with previous experience as crime scene investigator. Cicero said his specialty is with crime scene investigation with bloodstains. Cicero explained to the jury how bloodstains work and how investigators look at stain shape to pull information about the case. He also explained how CSIs reconstruct scenes. Cicero was asked to assist with the Delphi murders February 12, 2024. So obviously 7 years later, he didn't visit the scene until April 4th. He stated the state shared a number of exhibits which showed stains found at the scene and diagram where the bodies were found. He pointed out a blood stain on a tree, explaining that there was a transfer stain. Transfer stains are left behind when a bloody object comes in contact with another. After showing the jury stains, explained how CSI uses chemicals to make blood stains stand out. Luminol. Cicero said all of the stains found at the scene were transfer stains. Cicero then explained the blood stains found on Libby German's body included a transfer stain on her foot. Light and blood on her face, blood found on her thighs. Cicero said due to the altered blood patterns, he believes at one point Libby was sat upright, but then moved after dying. He also added blood found on the tree belonged to Libby. He said he did not believe Abby Williams was moved after injury. Williams did not had blood on her hands, which Cicero said could have been due to the possibly being restrained or unconscious. Yeah, I always thought about that as well. Remember, there's that mark on her under her lip. I wonder if she got hit with a gun or something blunt and maybe knocked her out, and then he went and took care of Libby while she was kind of unconscious or something. So that's interesting. So he's gonna obviously continue. And we'll finish up here. He is gonna...
Teenage girls, Abby Williams and Liberty German, had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge.
He is obviously going to bring up this here. He's basically going to say that Libby got hit with the throat. She was standing up. She got blood on her thighs. Obviously, she was sadly naked, which is absolutely terrible. So blood was dripping down. Then, of course, she had been holding the wound. Now she had blood on her hand. Her hand did kind of an upside L motion. We had an expert on this show explaining that almost a year ago. So this is no surprise that this is an upside down L. Notice how it's thinner up here and it's wider down here. That is because the blood, when she came in contact at the top, blood had gone down, and as blood goes down, it widens out and broadens. That's why you look up here, it's thinner. You look down here, it's wider, because that is gravity and blood's getting soaked in and it gets wider. Notice, same thing with these little ones. And that is just basic 101 and blood expertise that is way beyond my expertise. But obviously we had somebody explaining that a long time ago. Yes, please unsubscribe if that doesn't fit your narrative. But that is basically, sounds like that's what that expert's going to be talking about, is Libby's wounds, which is kind of weird because we've already kind of gone through their wounds. Yeah, the confessions are going to be huge, in my opinion. So, I'm just ready for the confessions, because when you're talking about confessions that only a killer would know, I don't know how you're going to explain that. Yeah, you can pick a little stuff out. I wish the public could see those interviews so we could all judge. I think, that is something that people are fascinated with, these interrogation videos and, these experts, these behavioral analysts that come in and point out certain things. And it would be nice to see Richard Allen's interrogation videos, and does he show signs of deception? Again, Allen's his worst own enemy, in my opinion. When it all comes down at the very end, Allen is his worst own enemy. He is the one that puts himself there wearing the clothes of Bridge Guy. His timeline changes, yet the timeline doesn't add up with this new timeline, because he should be running into people that don't see him. So I just, again, and I've never seen anybody be able to explain the timeline. Like, where's he at? How's people not see him? Where's the three other girls? Why haven't they come forward? How come they haven't found him if there's these three other girls? There's just so many holes. And before we get to the BH who has an alibi, or we go to Elvis Field who has a mentality of a child, I think we need to, focus on Richard first before we move on to others, because this guy's the one that lives 5 minutes away. He's got photo albums of him being there at the bridge. He's clearly familiar with the Monon High Bridge. So the killer clearly knew it was a dead end for those girls. I mean, I could go on with a bunch of stuff. It is much harder to file it's much harder. Because there's no video, there's no audio, there's no transcript. So you have to go off journalists' blogs, basically. And you can't fault them. They're going to make mistakes. We've seen it almost every day where there's something that's misquoted. And so that means I've got to go after this live show and go listen to a bunch of live shows and put my notes together. And then tomorrow we do it over again. And usually we'll have better updates from the day before. But yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. But eventually we're going to get to the confessions. I don't care. I could care less about the bullet. The confessions are the deal breaker, in my opinion. I don't either. Oh, no worries. No worries. Again, at the end of the day, I think a lot of us, it doesn't matter on what side you're on, I think we all just want, closure for Libby and Abby. I just feel like, obviously emotions are high. And I think even I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn person. And so it's really hard to change my ideas and theories once I get, into get invested into certain stories. And so I can understand both sides of people being, maybe not stubborn, but whatever, I appreciate that, Angel. Again, that's why I like to make timelines, these visual timelines, because they really put things in perspective. And I've done one last thing before we go. Let me just show you what would happen if Richard Allen was on the bridge during the time he said he was on the bridge.
Abby Williams and Liberty German had made last-minute
I've
plans
showed this
to
before,
go to
but
the Monon High.
This is the big issue with Richard Allen being there from noon to 1:30. Okay. So, Richard Allen gets there at noon. If he's at there... Now, this is funny because they want to keep attacking the... So, they want to attack the CPS building. So, if they're attacking the CPS building, and I say attack as in... They're going to use Betsy Blair to say, oh, there's a Mercury comet there, right? So... Anyway, so if Richard Allen's parked there, we know it only takes probably like 5 to 6 minutes from there to walk to Freedom Bridge. But we'll just put him a little ahead of the girls. Don't forget, Betsy Blair is arriving. She is now on this part here. So don't forget, Betsy Blair is now actually coming back up this way. So she'd be about here. And no matter what, even if you slow him down by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, he's still going to go and run into these 4 girls at the bridge. That's the issue. I have not seen anybody be able to dispute this. Forget the other 3 girls. And then they would almost be walking in tandem back, because remember, the girls are going to take a picture of a bench at 126. And if Allen's getting back to his car at 130, well, they would basically be following each other. Either Richard Allen would be in the front or he'd be right behind him. And this is why now they're going to say 2:15, because, oops, Richard Allen wasn't thinking about it when he changed his timeline. Well, if he's leaving at 1:30, the bridge guy gets there at 1:30. And, well, that doesn't make sense, because he should have seen the killer. I know, I've gone through that a million times, but again, I encourage anybody on the other side, make a timeline, make it make sense. I would love to see it. It's just common sense, and yeah. And it's just Richard Allen's own words, and the clothing. I could care less what the witness saw or didn't see, because he was covered in a bunch of shit. So of course they're not going to be able to say, "Oh, that's the killer that passed me," because he's dressed up. Oh, thanks, Richardson. I appreciate it. I'm sorry. I did get a little emotion to today, because it's like, I've seen the other sides, and the only time they attack the timeline is they do this. This is what they do. This is what I've seen them do. They go like this. They're like, okay, 1:30 p.m. here. Sorry. Do something like this. And then they'll put somebody else's timeline here, somebody else's timeline here. And yeah, it'll be in order, but it doesn't give you that visual. And you can obviously interpret this in many ways when you just got something basic where, Betsy Blair's there from, well, I guess it depends on what time you want her there, but, she comes back at, 1:40, then she's leaving. She sees the car at 2:14, so she's probably leaving at like 2:10 or something like that. But these are the only timelines I see people do. And so you could obviously leave this up to a bunch of interpretation. Whereas when you break it down into a visual form, it gives you much a better idea, especially when you're on a linear path, that there's only so many options that you can work with a linear path. I appreciate it. If you guys can, hit that like button. We'll be back on tomorrow. I am going to do a video because we still have like the national media coming out saying that, Richard Allen's working in the pharmacy and, they even found interviews with people supposedly like, oh, yeah, I met him in the pharmacy drive-through, which... So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. There's still a lot of misinformation out there. Exactly, Occam's razor. Occam's razor. Yeah, I think we're going to get answers come the confessions. They're going to we're going to hear the who, what, why, and where, how, more or less, kind of. And I think it's going to really rock some people's worlds when that comes out. Yeah, one of them was. Yeah, this is the F tree. Somewhere in here. Yeah, the F tree got leaked out. It's not an F though. We've done tests before. We used to do. That's why I need to get this box cutter. Anyway, I have the F tree. You can find it in the video. Oh, I missed PayPal. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to Gabriel. I'm sorry, guys. There was a lot to go over today, surprisingly, but nothing major. Obviously, in my opinion, this is kind of more or less a win for the defense because it's, no DNA for Richard Allen, but that also means no DNA for BH, EF, RA, PW. If we're supposed to have like 5 people there, we should have DNA everywhere. Maybe not everywhere, but you would think there would be some DNA from one of those 5 guys, But, especially the guy that spit on the girls, I don't know if people know, saliva is kind of the most potent DNA. That's why they go for toothbrush. But yeah, no spit found on the girls. Richardson family, thank you so much for the $20 super sticker. God bless you. I'm gonna head out here. Obviously, I'm a little tired. I've been working some really late days. I'm gonna get some rest. Yeah, and there's definitely different box cutters where blades come out more. Yep. Damn, I missed a lot. I'm sorry, guys. Stephanie, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to member. Richardson, thank you for earlier and now. You guys are awesome. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully there'll be some more interesting information. I really hope they don't do the Jerry Holman stuff. I hope they just put that aside and just go for the confessions. I mean, we are almost at the end of the month. And then we started, I forget the date, 18th, something like that. So, I mean, we're kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here. Well spoken. Yeah. Well spoken. I agree, Pocahontas. We all have opinions. I just ask people to be respectful in chat. Appreciate it, guys. All right, we'll be back same time tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, without getting emotional. I know I got a little emotional myself. I need to restrain that. I'm just a little cranky because I just been working late listening to all this stuff. But again, we will see you guys tomorrow. I appreciate all the love and support. Hopefully this will calm some people down.